the rights I talked about earlier, the having sex, the getting married, the not being fired, are all based on Supreme Court rulings. So you could have another Supreme Court come in and decide they want to flip those. And there's constantly movements afoot from both sides of always trying to get their cases heard. So because it's not locked into law, because both Democrats and Republicans have failed to get any law passed that protects LGBTQ rights. It is my rights are only. I go back to the when I'm chasing after my Republican friends saying, hey, this is what you're voting for, or these are my rights at stake. That's what I'm talking about, because this stuff it's not locked in law. It's just up to an interpretation of 9 people right on the Supreme Court judge. So.
One of the things that drove me insane about the pandemic was being told that you can't operate, right? Which I understood.
Yeah.
I understood why, but it's very difficult as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, to make any kind of plans if you don't know what's going to be happening next. Like if you don't understand what you're going to be allowed to do, how can you build anything? If you don't have this strong foundation that you can just layer and stack your effort on top of, your efforts just keep tumbling over, right? And so to hear you talk about how, your rights, like your human rights, civil liberties, right? They can be interpreted differently. It's not something that's just hard written into the law that the rest of basically straight America, they can count on, certain rights and being able to build on this solid foundation. Applying like my business perspective to your like social reality is a little heartbreaking, because it's like, how can you build?
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, it's not something that weighs on you daily, but I will say it weighed on a lot of the community, the LGBTQ community during the Trump administration. I mean, there was lots of fear, right or wrong. That was just kind of what it was, right? I mean, there are some things that the Trump administration did in terms of transgender rights that really, in terms of transgender folks serving in the military, basically said you can't serve. Now, the Trump administration supporters will say, well, that's not what the law was. That said transgender folks can serve in the military just as long as they dress in the attire with which they were born, right? So if a trans woman who presents as a woman wants to be in the military, that woman has to dress as a man because that's how that woman was born, right? So that's one thing that was harmful. But so there was that sense over the last 4 years of like, oh, something's going to happen. So we're next. And again, this is not a Trump bashing thing. It's just a sense of where the community was. It's like there was all this. And it was in the Republican platform too that it was like was still against gay marriage, right? So these things don't make you feel good about wanting to vote for a party that says your marriage could potentially be invalidated, right? Now again, there's plenty of folks that found reason to vote for him that didn't pertain to LGBTQ rights, which is again part of what we have the right to do in this country. So, but that's the sense. If you thought people's hairs are on fire during the last 4 years, that's what it was. It's like, okay, you're on a platform that says we can't get married, that says you can't serve how you identify in the military. These are not things that we feel are setting other positive things for us in motion. If anything, we're going backwards from where we thought we were going. And so, and that just again, not a Trump bashing thing, but when you hear the thing like "Make America Great Again," it's like you start to realize, okay, great again was we got fired for being gay, in the 50s and 60s. We got, we couldn't serve in the military openly. Our bars got raided. We couldn't get married. We couldn't have sex. All these sorts of things. It's like, well, that wasn't a great time for me. It was a great time for some folks, but it wasn't for me. And so that's where you start to. I know it's an aspirational thing, but it is one of those things that are like, well, those weren't and there was a book in college that one of our professors, I think he wrote it, he was like, the good old days, but were they? And so he starts to tell the stories of, And it wasn't even then, oddly enough, it wasn't about the LGBTQ community, but it was about the African American community who, again, fought in World War II, and then only to be, after coming back, only to be viewed as second-class citizens, right? And so it is those sorts of things that make you question what are we trying to go back to, because that wasn't a good time for me.